Hello, everyone. We're in the second part of Proverbs 19 today. We will begin with verse 18. The background of our study, of course, are some pretty stressful, anxiety-ridden days of perhaps a glimmer of hope that things will be better for a while. We expect the end of the war in Gaza. And while we don't expect it, we would certainly pray for the end of the persecution throughout the West Bank as well, and the end of the threat to the state of Israel by those who would see it destroyed. For now, I think we'll take the small wins. Our daughters are safe. I have a number of friends whose homes were damaged, in one case utterly destroyed, in Ramat Aviv, in my former congregation. The devastating news of the 7 soldiers who were killed yesterday, reverberating. So all that in the background as we study wisdom literature and wonder why this material hasn't become internalized by so much of our leadership, both in Israel and here in the United States. Okay. Megan, start with you, 18 to 20.
Discipline your son while there is still hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction. A hot-tempered man incurs punishment. If you try to save him, you will only make it worse. Listen to advice and accept discipline in order that you may be wise in the end.
Okay, any comments?
I don't understand the second line.
Yeah.
And do not set your heart on destruction?
On his destruction.
Yeah. So not everybody agrees to the translation of Al tisan nafshecha. Literally means don't raise up your soul. So does that mean intentionality? Does that mean come to grips with? I think Fox has um, 18 to 20. Yeah, discipline your son for there is hope. We'll get to that in a second, the first line, the difference between while or because or for. And do not desire to kill him. Do not desire to kill him. In other words, if you give up hope and you don't discipline your son, then what the book of Proverbs is saying is that essentially you are expressing your desire to end that son, to kill that son, end of his life. Now, by not teaching him wisdom is essentially killing him, will lead to his death. Now, whether that means actual death because he won't learn to be careful and will drive while he's intoxicated or on the wrong side of the road, or does that mean that, or the child will step off the edge of the cliff because you didn't scold them for getting too close to the edge of the cliff? Or does that mean that that person's life will be worth nothing because he won't be contributing to society, the hyperbolic understanding of death? But one way or another, it places the onus of the responsibility of a good life, a good life, a long life, or survival or thriving puts the onus on the parents. Does that make it any more understandable? Or okay?
Is there a component of punish? During discipline, you can do punishment, but don't overdo it.
So not in this case, it's a question of whether you discipline them or not discipline them. When each of us are in public spaces, um, or sometimes with our grandchildren, we sometimes it seems to us that a child is not being disciplined. When we see certain adults acting the way they do, without, yeah, certain very powerful adults acting the way they do, it seems like perhaps they did not have discipline. Um, so it's not about the measure of discipline, it's the either or not, either to or not discipline. The JPS translation, the old JPS, this is the new JPS translation. The old one from 1917 has chasten thy son, for there is hope. Not while there is still hope, but for there is hope. And what Fox mentions, that's his translation, the same direction as well, because he says that ki yesh tikva, understanding ki as while as opposed to because or for, is not according to the syntax. He's a bigger expert than I am, but it feels to me like the second translation is truer to what the intention is, right? It's discipline or not discipline as opposed to discipline in time while there's still hope. Although either one can be found. I think it works better. I think it works better with the second translation. Um, Anything else on that struck people?
I was a little confused. Discipline your son. Then, do not set your heart on his destruction, which means, as you just said, and a hot-tempered man incurs punishment. Is this the person giving the punishment, or what's going to happen to the son?
No, I don't think that I think like most of the doublets here, they're not necessarily related.
Or not even connected.
They've
Okay.
been bunched together here because this all has to do with behavior and behavior modification. But I don't know that it has to do with a parent and a child.
Okay.
That would certainly make it less difficult, right? If that was the case.
So in this case, discipline in the first line is not the same word as punishment in the third line?
Yeah, the word for discipline is yaser, like the word musar that we've had so much, musar, and the which is discipline is teaching through. In other words, it's not punishment for the sake of punishment. Punishment, onish, punishment. That's that is not musar. What would be the
But a child looks upon discipline by his parent as punishment.
right? Except for a parent should be looking at either disciplining or punishing. There's two different things. So should a judicial system, right? The criminal system should also be looking at that. Interaction between nation states should be looking at that also, right?
So discipline does not imply, it is just teaching the right
Yeah,
thing.
it's part of the teaching process.
Okay, okay.
Even if we don't see it that way anymore, that's how it's being presented here. Right. So do you bomb Iran's nuclear sites because it's disciplined so that they will learn not to do it again, or that you will protect yourself, or is it a punishment to rub their faces in it? The way that they present it, the word that gets to us through the Iranian is that it's a humiliation, which is more of a punishment. Yes, Rita Claire.
I was going to say that if you don't discipline, then the next thing is punishment. So you don't want to punish, you want to discipline.
Okay, that would explain.
I find with my own grandchildren too, like you have experienced, that only if they had continually been disciplining, then there wouldn't be cause for punishment.
Yeah, I don't know that our children punish. I don't think that
No,
they.
they don't.
No, not just this, but I think that the whole concept of punishment is very, very different. And
Yeah.
I'm not making a judgment here. On the discipline issue, maybe I'll make a judgment, but on the punishment, um, yeah, you're grounded.
Mhm.
Okay. Uh, Anything else on this? So let's take a look at Sefer Chinuch, an interesting book. We brought it from time to time. I'll bring it. It is a 613 chapter book, anonymous. I think people think from the, I seem to remember 14th, 15th century. I could be wrong, but we don't know exactly where, when, we don't know by who. There's a genre of books of the mitzvot of the 613 commandments. And as opposed to those lists that list the positive and the negative separately, this one lists them according to the Torah portion as they appear in the five books of Moses. And so 594 is pretty much towards the end, right? So you realize that's going to be in Deuteronomy, the latter part of Deuteronomy. I received this is a book was a quintessential bar mitzvah gift in Israel for years, for decades. It was an edition that came out, Eshkol, that had a vocalized edition with dots, so it's easier to read. I remember I bought one. I was given one when I was in Israel when I was 15. I cherished it and I looked at it every Torah portion to look and see. It's broken down into what the law is, what the commandment is, and then it says there's a section that says and the roots of that law, and there's a section that says and the details of those the laws of that mitzvah, and the final section was always does it apply or not apply in this time after the destruction of the temple? Does it apply or not apply in or outside of the land of Israel? I brought just part of it here again, so I would read this for us. Sefer Chinuch. Chinuch means education, the book of education.
I'm sorry, did you ask me to read?
Yes, please.
Okay. The commandment to lash the evildoer. That the court was commanded to lash those transgressing some of the commandments of the Torah, and this is the matter of lashes mentioned in the Gemara. And like the matter that I have written in each and every commandment that has a liability for lashes with it, and as I will likewise write in that which I will write in the future with God's help. And about this it is stated in Deuteronomy, and the judge shall have him lie down and be given lashes in his presence as his guilt warrants, etc. It is from the roots of the commandment that since Israel are called the children of the omnipresent, he, may he be blessed, wanted to discipline them for their sins, so that they return to him and, in the end, merit the world that is completely good. And like the matter that is written, discipline your son while there is hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction. And based on this principle, they, may their memory be blessed, said in Makot, that we estimate the strength of the one liable for lashes, such that he not die from the wound of the lashes. And they would lash him according to that which they have appraised him, so that he can withstand from the flogging and not die. And even after they estimated him and started flogging him, if they saw he's not able to withstand the estimate that they estimated about him, they leave him. As we say in the chapter entitled Elohein Elokin in Tractate Makot 22b, if he is partially flogged and they saw that he is not fit to take that which they estimated about him, he is exempt.
But isn't that agreeing with what I said? You can punish or you can discipline somebody, but don't overdo it.
Yes. So
Here,
but-
discipline is punishment.
yeah. So what the question was less in the simple meaning of the text. I don't know that that's there. I think that the meaning there is quite different. The meaning is on behalf of discipline, if you don't do it, he's liable to die. Now, what Sefer Chinuch has done is he's shown us, with the help of that verse, how the reason when he says the roots of the mitzvah, he means he means the reason for the mitzvah. It's his attempt at explaining things that are not explained in the Torah. But why is it given in such a way? Why does the Talmud talk about it in such a way and give so many different ways of what when even if you decided to do 39, you stop at 15 or 12 or 7 or don't do it at all if it's dangerous to his life. In other words, exactly what you said, right? Discipline is important, but not if it brings about death. The difference, Les, is that I think the simple meaning of the text is what I said above, and this is a midrashic meaning. Yeah. using the verse from Proverbs in the halachic conversation, which is not exact that, yeah, about what to do, but also to understand why it's worded in such a way. Why is it worded in Deuteronomy that he should and a judge shall have him lie down and be given lashes with it. Lie down and be given lashes in his presence, as his guilt warrants. Anyway, yes, that's the so yes, yeah, okay,
It reminds me of a father saying to his son, you know, this is going to hurt me than you, more me than you. I don't think that's entirely true.
okay. All right, Les, 21, 23.
Okay. Many designs are in a person's mind, but it is God's plan that it is accomplished. Greed is a reproach to a man, better be poor than a deceitful man. One who fears God earns life and shall abide in contentment, free from misfortune.
Okay.
So the
Here I
beginning
go.
is the the whole saying, a man, what is it? Man plans and God laughs or something like that.
Der Mensch tracht und Gott lacht, right? A man will plan and God will laugh. Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. And it's interesting. This is I can remember singing this already from high school. You know, the Shabbat afternoon song is very low key, slow. Um, it's a genre, songs of Shabbat afternoon that you sing around the table during Sudash Dishit, the third meal, and I have vivid memories of Rabot Machshavot Belevish Vatzat Hashem Hitaku La ra 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 ra. It's interesting that those lines of all the things, it's kind of a contemplative thing, we let's take a deep breath. All this planning we're doing, none of it really matters, right? Well, it matters, but it's not necessarily things don't turn out the way that we plan them. And who amongst us hasn't felt that in our lives, right? Yeah, absolutely. So then, Les, why don't you read from the Midrash as well?
And it shall be like a planted tree, as it is said in Proverbs. She is a tree of life to those who hold onto her.
Okay, so what he's doing, the Midrash Tehillim here in the book of Psalms, the first chapter, it actually and it shall be planted like a tree. I'm pretty sure it refers there to the man, the man who is the beloved man, the happy, the successful man, is like a tree planted on water, nourished from the water. And then he connects it to the Torah, right? She is Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikim Ba'avatom Chaim Meushar, which is related to wisdom or to the Torah. Let's see the various different participants in this conversation now. Go ahead.
Rabbi Yitzchak, son of Rabbi Chia, asks, why is the Torah called the tree of life? He answers, because it is beloved to all life. Rabbi Yudan asks, why is the Torah compared to a tree of life? He answers, just as a tree of life spreads its branches to all the inhabitants of the world in the Garden of Eden, so too, the Torah is spread out for all of life, bringing them to the eternal life and the world to come. It is taught that the tree of life stands for 500 years, and all the days of creation are divided under it.
Okay, I contend some of the translation here. I went back to the original. There's some words that could be translated one way, and I think the first one could go either way. It says here the Torah is spread out for all life. That probably is the translation, although one could also translate here the Torah is interpreted for all life. Everybody has a possibility of interpreting it. I kind of like that one. It goes along with my pluralistic motivation or my pluralistic agenda. Um, but so while the first by Rabbi Yitzchak by Rabbi Chiba by Rabbi Chia says because it's beloved to all life, right? It's the tree of life, beloved. This one, Rabbi Yudin goes into better description of why that metaphor of a tree is used. It branches in this idea that it spreads over, it provides shade and shelter. Um, and then if you flip the page, we get to that other line that says, "It is taught that the tree of life stands for 500 years, and all the days of creation divided under it." No, I think that the translation should be there. It is it's Mahalach Chamesh Mot Shana doesn't mean it stands, it goes on for 5 years. It means that it is so large that it would take 500 years to walk from one end to the other, kind of like the speed of light kind of a thing. And and so it's not all the days, all of creation uh, 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 happened under it. It's kind of this idea, it's almost the deification of this great mythological tree. And that would be interesting to go and see what else. The way I would do it, of course, would be to look up tree or tree of life in the index of Louis Ginsburg's Legends of the Jews and try to weed out the ones that, and then look for it. You know, his book is divided into a kind of a retelling of the Torah of biblical literature with the help of legends of the rabbis, not just the first millennium, but material from the second millennium as well. And then there's notes. There's very, very copious notes afterwards. And I would look in the notes to see who else talks about this tree that's provided shade, provided tree, shade or shelter for the entire creation. Anyway, so go ahead, Rabbi Shmuel.
Rabbi Shmuel, son of Rabbi Yitzhak, planted himself from group to group in order to fulfill Mitzvah 119:99. From all my teachers, I have gained understanding. Just as the tree of life stands by the waters of Tiberias and its environs, and its fruit are produced in their season, so too the students of a person who toils in Torah study and who sets times for Torah, reading, Mishnah, and Talmud will flourish. Its leaves will not wither, for everyone needs its conversation and study. Whatever he does will succeed, for everyone needs his counsel, like Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, who provided advice that was successful and fulfilled.
Okay, so this also is a mistranslation. In fact, I'm wondering if this wasn't fed to Google Translator and then somebody kind of brushed up, but somebody who didn't really have a great knowledge of the Hebrew here. So if we start from the beginning, it's a beautiful play on words, but right, this Rabbi Shmuel, he planted himself just like the verse in Psalms. He's planted upon the waters. So what did he do? He planted himself in the different kinds of waters, the flavors of waters, the types of waters of Torah in different places. And one for him to fulfill the verse in Psalms, "From all of my teachers I have gained understanding." That's one. And then the example is, just as the tree of life stands by, and that is, it should be the waters of Tiberias or Chamei Tveria as a place. It's not the waters as for the waters. It's actually the hot springs to the Tiberias hot springs. But it's just a name for Tiberias, and Sipori is missing from the translation. So Sepphoris, those were the two centers of rabbinic study at the time this material was created in the second half of the first millennium, and or no, already earlier. I, fourth, fifth century, maybe, or maybe as early as fourth, fifth century. And so it's as if he went to these different Batei Midrash, these different study halls in these two famous places, Tiberias and Sepphoris. And then he was able and then the words, its fruits are produced in their season, is a continuation of the quote from Psalms. And it says, and there too, the idea of fruits, the fruits of all that study are the Mishnah and the Talmud, etc. And all that succeed. I needed to do more work on this. I should have edited this much better, but I only saw the problem with the translation after I already printed the text or sent it out. Will succeed is also a quote from the Psalms that says, and that person who does that who goes to different teachers, who studies in different universities and study halls and reads different kinds of books and opens one's ears to different kinds of words of wisdom from different directions, that person is the successful one. And that person, like Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, he's the one who provides advice that is successful and fulfilled. You gotta get around. You've got to really, this is kind of, you meet, I'm exposed to, I'll just keep it in my own field, to rabbis. Some rabbis who did really well, they were brilliant students in their rabbinical school. So they are drafted right, recruited right away by their institutions or by other institutions for partial administrative jobs, partial mentoring jobs. And I always want to say, but you have no experience in the field. How good of a mentor can you be if your mentees are going through experiences and realities that you've never done yourself? That's kind of one. It's like doctor, it's medical training. I learned from a 2-year fellowship that I had as a senior educator at the end of the 90s. One of the things I learned the most from was somebody who had been involved in setting curriculum for medical school and the whole medical school process. And that realization that doctors have it right, that spending so much of the time in the field, as it were, right, in the practice, I mean, Les, please chime in here, as opposed to some of the time with the books. But I mean, where did most of your real education come from, Les? Or am I
Yeah,
over?
yeah. I mean, you spend the first year or two, depending on how long your program is, doing what's called basic science,
Right.
and then you do the clinical things so that you understand as you're seeing what you're seeing and learning about it, you understand the biology and physiology and chemistry of it. And then you begin to practice during your residency and you get more and more experience. And what's interesting is you forget all of the kind of real basic science stuff. So I'll just give you an example. I had to learn the Krebs cycle to understand things I learned later on. But if you ask me about the Krebs cycle now, I can't tell you anything about it. But I can tell you about diabetes and all these other things that use the Krebs cycle to understand, to make drugs and all that stuff.
Hmm. And I might add that not only do you get your own experience in treatment, and in the beginning you're supervised in a much tighter sense, right? But then if you are the kind of doctors I've appreciated in my own lifetime, being taken care of, the ones that continue to read research on a regular basis, like are seriously involved, constantly reading research, they're learning from other people's ongoing experiences, and that science when it comes together. Anyway, that education.
Let me just add one thing, and
Oh,
that's the
please.
other thing is that if you are teaching students, you are forced to keep up with the literature and you're forced to explain things. And you even say, they'll ask you a question and you'll say, why don't you go read about it and come back and we'll talk about it. And you learn from that. So the teacher learns from the students. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. I had that blessing when I ran this organization, Rikama, that you've heard me mention from time to time, for 17 years, although it continued even to the last year. The last year was actually my first year in Palm Springs. I continued even when I was in Sweden. And that's why Moore was here. Some of you studied Hebrew with Moore, who was working with me on that project. But I brought some really talented rabbinical students together on a regular basis in the beginning, once a week. And I had an ongoing relationship with some of these folks and helping them with their projects and starting new congregations, getting involved in older congregations and changing them. But I learned tremendous amounts. And at some point, I went back to being a rabbi in the field myself, and always gained from that experience. Yeah, and I miss that world. I miss that relationship of that back and forth. And so while I do have a collegial relationship with the church clergy in our area that you all know about, and there's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of commonalities they don't have to do with Jewish law or Jewish theology necessarily. They have to do with dynamics. Anyway. And just reminding everybody that 6 o'clock this evening is the vigil at St. Paul's. I hope you can come, um, where we'll be gathering for just an hour to pray and think and learn something about how we might encourage those who are in fear of deportation in our community. Okay, so why don't we finish? We're on that last part with Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. They said to him,
They said to him, "You are a prophet." And he said to them, "I'm not a prophet, nor am I a son of a prophet, but this is what I have received from my teachers. Any advice that is for the sake of heaven will eventually be fulfilled." Rabbi Menashe said, "It is a full scriptural verse, as it says in Proverbs 19, and the counsel of the Lord shall stand. Any advice that contains the word of God will eventually be fulfilled."
okay, and all this to bring us those two verses that we had. Um, okay, any comments or questions about this? Or? Okay. Eileen, 2429.
Sure. A sluggard buries a hand in the bowl and will not even bring it to the mouth. Beat scoffers and the simple will become clever. Reprove the intelligent and they gain knowledge. A son who causes shame and disgrace plunders his father, puts his mother to flight. My son, cease to stray from words of knowledge and receive discipline. A malicious witness scoffs at justice, and the speech of the wicked conceals mischief. Punishments are in store for scoffers, and blows for the backs of dullards.
Kind of a potpourri
Ooh.
here. Any comments or questions?
My question from the beginning of these readings are they talking about everyday activities that would cause shame, or a straying from Torah study or in study? I mean, can life be separated or not?
Let's try to put a finer point on your question. So what are the two options? What is that you're toying with, that you're questioning?
Well, is a son that strays from Torah study considered worthy of punishment if he in fact is a good son in other ways?
Well, so do you see here the words a son who strays from Torah study?
No, but not specifically, but I guess I interpreted this is all straying from learning.
Well, there is that straying from learning, but let's be careful not to get too influenced by the rabbinic text that we read, that very specific Torah study, meaning their own Torah, the rabbis, the sages. Um, but and also their couplets, right? Remember that they don't necessarily relate to each other more than 2 lines or 3 lines at a time. So there's all throughout this text, there's been the leitmotif of the dullard, the fool, the lazy, the one who doesn't, that's bad news. And they've found 99 ways to say that, more or less, that if you don't open up your ears and learn something, you're gonna be a failure at life. And then there's other comments about evil inclinations that we've had. There's comments about leadership and how that might be perilous. Um, there's a lot of comments to the parents of, which we have here as well, and how their responsibility is to help create good citizens for the future. So, I mean, that's kind of the challenge of this part of the book of Proverbs, which we've said, which we still have like another chapter to go, I think, until we have until 22:16, I think. this land of couplets where it's hard to get a composite picture of what the author of Proverbs wants to say because it looks like he's just repeating, he's just copying these little sayings, these little 2-3 liner sayings. So after that, and how else can I help? How else can I give you an answer or attempt to give you an answer?
I think I'm losing. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Your picture is
Can you
fine.
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but
Something's happening. Uh, I think the word citizenship really helped me.
Hmm.
I can see, I can see operating in in a, a complete world, but study and I don't know. Oh,
No,
am I all
we can hear
frozen?
you, Eileen.
Um,
It's all right. It looks like it's just a
I think you cleared it up a little for me,
okay.
basically. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Rabbi, what thought that came to my mind is what you were saying, how it's sort of all thrown together is that the book of Proverbs needs an editor, a good editor, because there is a lot of repetition and because it's broken up, it's hard to understand the message of the repetition.
Yeah, so the background or of your statement or the assumption of your statement is that he's writing a book, or the person who edited this section of the book at least is editing it according to what we would like to see. As opposed to perhaps just recording, maybe he was challenged to record every saying that was out there in the world. Maybe it's like, what if you come across a book in hundreds of 100 years from now, somebody comes across a book, um, like one of those websites of famous people's quips, that people look at to put on, to base their remarks, their speeches, this so and so said.
Quotations.
Yeah, the book of quotations, yeah. What is that? What was the purpose of bringing? I guess I guess this is the real challenge. We don't know the purpose. It's hard for us to ascertain the purpose of this part of the book of Mishle. Like, what's he trying to, other than a list of
Probably
just,
to collect the wisdom literature from a lot. To me, the book of Mishle, and especially because they say Mishle Shalomo, and he was a very international type of king, that I think, and then if you look at Proverbs 21 to 23 or something like that, the only reason we know that it's taken directly from Egyptian wisdom literature is because we happen to discover it in Egypt. But I think these are just sayings from various international points that were in the purview of the Israelites, and Shalomo collected them.
hmm. So just a collection, an anthology.
Mm-hmm.
Les, I'm not sure this is the same thing, but I'm reminded of assumptions about how people edit things. There's a famous book called Sefer Haggadah, which is Bialik and somebody else. Bialik, and I can't remember the other name. Chaim Nachman Bialik being the more famous one, so everybody calls us Bialiks, but it's really two people did this. It's an anthology of stories and quotes from the rabbinic, from the Talmudic and Midrashic literature. It's different than, say, the Legends of the Jews, which I mentioned beforehand, which is the genre of the rewritten Bible, taken from different places. This is breaking it down to certain topics. So if you're looking for But if you were in the old days when you were looking, Rivnitsky, Bialik Rivnitsky, was the other guy. If you were looking for different topics of, to give a speech on it, to give a Dvar Torah on whatever, you could find it. It was a topical index. It was arranged topically. So that's how they arranged it. And then I remember bringing it up in this same educate this 2-year fellowship that I was in at the end of the 90s, and somebody saying, one of the women saying, "Well, I refuse to use that. Bialik was a misogynist." I said, "Well, how do you know he was misogynist? I said, have you read his writings?" She said, "Well, look at the material that's in Sefer Haggadah." I said, that doesn't mean he's a misogynist. That means that the rabbis were misogynists. And he diligently, and it was in a pre-feminist, the first part of the 20th century, pre-feminist era, he brought, he reported what he found. In other words, I don't assign him that misogynistic motive. Today, we would say, with the fact that he included it, yes, but that's today and not 100 years ago or whenever it was written. Um, yeah. So, yeah, and unless you had a month off, we've been doing this for the last 4 weeks, and while you were, drinking cocktails on the banks of the Rhine or wherever you were, right? Okay.
Ireland,
Ireland, okay.
Guinness,
Guinness, where you were drinking Guinness and eating lots of what's that? The kishka
haggis.
haggis. You were
Scott.
you're eating Scottish haggis, Scottish kishka. Okay, all right.
So
So
your point is that being gone for 3 weeks, I missed things because it sounds like we're just repeating the same stuff over and over again.
no. My point is
Nothing personal.
my point is we suffered, and you had off. Now you could just suffer quietly. That's my real point. Okay. Anything else before we get to Tanhuma? I don't have anything particularly interesting to say. Um, in the fourth, maybe just the fourth line in Hebrew, the second word, Eid Blial, which is a malicious witness. Eid is witness. Ben Blial is an expression that you find in biblical literature already, and the best way to translate it, I think, certainly in post-rabbinic literature, but in Qumran it's used quite a bit. Dead Sea Scrolls is a son of a bitch. He was a son of a bitch. Okay. Let's go ahead. We'll go back to you, Dan, if you could read the Midrash, please.
Now Jethro heard, quoting from Exodus, Scripture says elsewhere in allusion to this verse, thine ointments have a goodly fragrance. Thy name is an ointment poured forth. Therefore do the maidens love thee, from Song of Songs. Rabbi Yanai, the son of Rabbi Simeon, the son of Yochai, said, the earlier generations merely chanted pleasant songs before you. But when we reached the sea, we left unuttered no words of praise with which to extol you. Hence it is said, thine ointments have a goodly fragrance. Another explanation. You gave to the earliest generations only the fragrance of the commandments. To Adam, you gave 1 commandment, and to Noah and his sons 6 commandments. But when we reached Sinai, you poured upon us all the commandments, as men pour ointment from a barrel. Thy name is an ointment, shemen, poured forth. Rabbi Berachia said, oil, shemen, is a light to the one who occupies himself with the oil of the Torah. Therefore, do the maidens love thee, alludes to the people of the world who come and convert. Which was one of these? It was Jethro. After he heard of the many miracles that had been performed for Israel, he came to them and converted. Now Jethro heard. What's written before this? It's the chapter describing the destruction of Amalek, and that is followed by, now Jethro heard. Scripture says elsewhere in allusion to this, when thou smitest a scorner, the simple will become prudent. Okay, brings us back to where we started. When thou smitest a scorner refers to Amalek, and the simple will become a prudent, alludes to Jethro.
Right, and I inadvertently put this here. It should have been after 19, right? But the point of the Midrash, of course, is it just I thought it was interesting. You've got something on the Torah portion. That's what Tanchum is writing on the story of Yitro coming in, and uh, in a sense converting. Doesn't say conversion so much, but it's still, and he is the priest of Minyan, so it's a noteworthy thing. He's Moses' father-in-law. And then by utilizing this verse from Song of Songs, which, as you all know, is seen as allegory to the relationship between the Holy One and the people of Israel, winds his way back to how Jethro learned the verse in Proverbs played itself out in Jethro's life, like we did a few weeks ago. That series that I did on how it plays out, but it's saying another thing as well. It's calling Jethro the simple one,
Mm,
simple one. Yeah, even though our biblical text says Jethro was the smart one, Jethro,
right.
the one who brought the wisdom to Moses, which is why we champion that story so much, right, in the liberal world. Um, I remember studying this with of Professor Moshe Greenberg of blessed memory, and he always we when we prepared for class, we had to know breakdown of every single word in the section we were doing. We knew we had to tell exactly what it was linguistically, not just the dictionary meaning, but also what root it came from and what format it was. We had to know the syntax. We had to know what Onkelos said, what the Aramaic translation said. We had to know Rashi, Rashbam, and maybe
Even Ezra.
possibly Ibn Ezra as well, and then also Brever Childs. Like it was 7 hours to prepare for an hour and a half every week. And he then would share with us after he ascertained that we had done it or humiliated us because we hadn't done it. Talk about a disciplinarian. Boy, did he teach me a lot. Um, and then he would share with us, and he shared with us a medieval Kabbalistic interpretation that said that Jethro was the essence of the Yetzer Hara, was the evil
Mm,
inclination, just to trick us into thinking that maybe there would be wisdom. Maybe there would be wisdom amongst the nations, and of course that's just to trick you. Moshe Greenberg was a very progressive liberal politically. He was one of the first, probably certainly the first of my teachers who spoke out and when he spoke, he gave a speech at a Peace Now demonstration while I was a student. He wrote on the topic, very
mm,
much utilized his studies and his understanding of Judaism to talk about what Israel had become and what it shouldn't be. Um, and so, but in order to know what Judaism is, has been, and where it should be, you need to study a lot. And I guess that brings me back to that source, the rabbinic source that we had from Midrash Tehillim about drinking in different places, even in places that you don't expect to find truth for yourself. But there's a different kind of a truth, and sometimes that truth is to think or to do exactly the opposite.
mm.
Comments or questions? Malga?
No, I was just wondering where that Midrashic interpretation came from.
Oh, I don't even know if I have notes. If I did have notes, where they would be and
Hmm.
how I would read. Yeah,
I can try to find it maybe.
yeah, interesting though. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, folks?
Mm.
All right. So you get out of class early today because the chapter ended, and also we don't want to tax Les too much. This is first time back. We
Can you
don't.
clarify, are we meeting for the next several weeks? Are there any gaps? When's the next gap?
It's hard for me to think ahead, less with my mother's situation. I'm planning on next week. While we are taking off Kabbalat Shabbat, I think Shabbat of the fourth and the fifth. I think we're not going to have prayers, but to me this is a constant thing. It's important for me. I hope it's important for you folks as well. I know that we'll be away at the end of August, beginning of September, so that there'll be 3 weeks then we certainly won't have class. But as of now, next few weeks, unless something happens that I have to cancel.
Mm.
Okay?
Put it on the calendar, right?
Thanks for the
Thank
question.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right, everybody.
Thank you.
Be well. Thanks for being here.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you, Madalena.